There is no benefit to be derived from looking at the darker side of things, and indeed it is a universal observation that there is no misfortune without its compensation. The loss of the great cattle grazing areas of the West increased the demand for our concentrated foods by the hundredfold. We paid no duty on the products shipped in from our South American factories, for they competed only with ourselves, and we did the country the humanitarian service of preventing a famine by rushing carload after carload westward, rising above all thoughts of petty gain by making no increase whatever in our prices despite the expanding demand. About this time it became indisputable that Button Gwinnett Fleas was no longer of value to Consolidated Pemmican. His Yankee shrewdness and caution, which enabled him to run the corporation when it was merely a name and a quotation on the stock market, had the limits of its virtues. He was extraordinarily provincial in outlook, and quite unable to see the concern on a world scale. In view of our vast expansion, such narrowness had become an unbearable hindrance. I had permitted him to hold a limited number of shares, and to act nominally as secretary, in order to comply with the regulations of the Security and Exchange Commission, but now it was expedient to add to our officers directors of other companies whose fields were complementary to ours. Besides, in General Thario I had a much abler assistant, and so, perhaps reluctantly because of my over-sensitivity, I displaced Fleas, and making the General president of the corporation, I accepted the post of chairman of the board. I must say he took a perfectly natural business move with unbecoming ill grace. "It was mine, Mr. Weiner, you know it was mine, and I did not protest when you stole it. I worked loyally and unselfishly for you. It isn't the money, Mr. Weiner, really it isn't. It's the idea of being thrown out of my own business. At least let me stay on the board of directors. You'll never have any trouble from me, I promise you that." It distressed me to reject his abject plea, but my hands were tied by my devotion to the welfare of the company. Besides, he annoyed me by his palpably untrue reference to what had been a legitimate transaction, never giving a thought to my generosity in not exposing his chicanery, nor the fact that the dummy he manipulated bore no resemblance whatever to the firm I had brought by my own effort to its present size. Leaving matters in the able hands of General Thario, after warning Joe he had better soon return to his father's assistance, I went abroad to arrange for wider European representation. There I found a curious eagerness to be of help to me, and almost fawning servility, antipathetic to my democratic American notions. Oddly enough, the Europeans looked upon the United States as a doomed country, thinking I, like some members of our wealthier classes, had come to escape disruption and dislocation at home. Only in England did I find the belief prevalent that the Americans would somehow muddle through, because after all they're the same sort of chaps we are, you know. After a highly successful trip, I returned home the same day the grass reached the headwaters of the Mississippi. William Rufus Lafacici astonished me, as well as every newspaperman in the country, by resigning as editor of the Daily Intelligencer, a post he had held before many of its reporters were born. When I phoned him to come to my office and explain himself, he refused, in tones and manner I had not heard from any man since the days when I had wasted my talents as a subordinate. Having none of the pettiness of pride, which makes some men fearful of their position, since he would not come to my office, I went to his. There he shocked me for the third time. A high, glossy collar, a flowing and figured cravat concealed the famous diamond stud, while instead of the snuff-box, his hands hovered over a package of cheap cigarettes. "Weiner," he rasped, jettisoning all those courtesies to which I had become accustomed, "I never thought I'd be glad to see your vapid face again, unless on a marble slab in some city morgue. But now you're here, moneybags slapping the insides of your thighs in place of the scrotum for which you could have no possible use, I am delighted to tell you in person To take my paper. My paper, sir, note that well, for all your dirty pawings could not make it anything but mine. And supposit it. I hope it frets you, Wiener, for the sake of your sniveling but immortal soul. I sincerely hope it rasps you like a misplaced hair shirt. You will get some miserable lickspittle to take my place, some mangy bookkeeping pimp with a permanent waved wife and 3 snotty-nosed brats, but the spirit and guts of the intelligencer depart with W.R. LaFacecy. I disregarded both his ill manners and his bombast. "What's the matter, Bill?" I asked kindly. "Is it more money? You can write your own ticket, you know. Within reason, of course." His fingers looked for the snuff-box, but found only the cigarettes, which he inspected puzzledly. "Wiener, no man could do you justice. You are the bloody prototype of all the arse-lickers, panders, arsonists, kidnappers, cutthroats, pickpockets, abortionists, pilferers, cheats, forgers, sneak thieves, sharpers, and blackmailers since Jacob swindled his brother. Do not fawn upon me, little man. I am too old to want women or money. The sands are running out, and I shall never now read the immortal Hobbes. But I'll not die in your bloody harness. In me you do not see the man who picked up the torch of Franklin and Greeley and Dana where Henry Watterson dropped it. Loose of your gangrenous chains, you behold the freelance correspondent of the North American Newspaper Alliance, the man who will devote his declining years to reporting, in the terse and vivid prose for which he is justly famous, the progress of the grass which strangles the country as you have tried to strangle me." Again, I put personal feelings aside. "If your mind is really made up, we'll want your stuff for the Intelligencer, Bill." "Sir, you may want. I hope the condition persists." There being no profit in arguing with a madman, I made arrangements to replace him immediately. I reproduce here, not for self-justification, which would be superfluous, but merely for what amusement it may afford, one of his accounts which appeared in the columns of so many third- and fourth-rate newspapers. I won't say it shows the decay of a once possibly great mind, but it certainly reveals that the Intelligencer suffered no irreparable loss. "Today at Dubuque, Iowa, the Mississippi was crossed. Not by red men in canoes, nor white on logs or clumsy rafts, nor yet by multi-wheeled locomotives gliding over steel bridges, nor airplanes so high the wide stream was a thread below. Nature and devastation, hand in hand, for the moment one and the same, crossed it today as Quantrell or Kirby Smith or Nathan Bedford Forrest crossed it, sabers glittering, so many forgotten years ago. But if the men in gray and butternut raided a store or burned a tavern, they thought it a mighty victory and went home rejoicing. The green invader is an occupier and colonizer come to remain for all time, leaving no town, no road, no farm where it has passed. A few weeks ago Dubuque was still here, quiet, old and pleasant, the butt of affectionate jokes, the grass still miles away, the population still hopeful of salvation. And then, because of the panic, the frantic scurrying to save things once valuable and now only valued, no one noticed when a betraying wind blew seeds beyond the town over the river to find receptive soil on the Wisconsin side. The seeds germinated, the clump flourished, it cut the highway and reached down the banks into the Mississippi, waiting. and while it waited it built up a greater bulk